What's up, man?
What's up, Michael?
Here we go. Crushing Iron Podcast number 61.
Ooh, 61. It's a solid number.
It's pretty solid.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Well, man, it's been a tough couple days, but I'm doing all right, man. I mean, it was as a lot of you maybe know, I lost one of my best friends, and I was just in Wisconsin for his funeral. And he touched so many lives that it truly was one of those celebration kind of things. And I mean, there's just endless stories and people from grade school and high school and college and chiropractic school and you name it. But I did want to share a real quick story from there, if I may.
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's kind of a big life piece, you know, and it was told by his brother who did the eulogy there. So John, Pete's brother, told the eulogy, and he told a little story about back in high school when Pete was 6'6", and he was he's a really good basketball player back in the day, and he had a high school rivalry with this guy named Brad Graybo, who was 6'5" and 265, and he ended up playing linebacker for the Badgers for 3 years. He's just a monster. Anyway, they had a rivalry in high school, and their senior year in the tournament, the final game they'd ever play against each other, my buddy Pete kind of went off on him. He got 17 in the first quarter, and his team ended up winning the game, and they went at it really hard that game. And afterwards, Brad Graybo came into Pete's locker room and walked up to him, and gave him the game ball. And he said, "Hey, man, you deserve this, you know." And they remained friends and everything. And then John's telling this story, and Brad's actually at the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And after John tells that little story, he leans down, reaches under the podium, picks up a ball, and he said, "Pete wants to give this back to you now."
Oh.
And I was like, oh, man, it just gave me chills. And Brad walked up there, and it was just a really, really magical kind of thing. But I guess it's pretty good. What I took out of it, and what I always try to do, you know, and it's there's no really happy place you can find after you lose a good friend, but it's kind of one of those things where I try to transcend it and include, and you know, just go beyond it and bring every good thing with you and see what you can do from there and what you learned and everything. And I kind of started thinking a little bit about that and how it applies to races and stuff too. And I don't mean to marginalize anything, but you know, I kind of feel like I kind of was a little bit down after Chattanooga, and I think what I got out of this weekend is that, you know, Pete kind of lifted me up again, and it kind of got me back in the road, and I actually finally just started running. I went out for a run again. I thought I was going to get the advantage of going 9 hours north, but it's about 88 degrees today.
Oh, man. Yeah, you didn't escape anything. It's actually it's still pretty humid here in Nashville, but yeah, you're not going to get an escape pretty much anywhere across the country right now unless you're in like way up north or Pacific, like Northwest.
Yeah, and man, how quickly you can lose it. But I know it comes back, but I mean, you know, if you haven't run for about 2 weeks like I haven't. Actually, it's 2 weeks today that I ran the half down at Chattanooga, and had a little trouble on this one. I may have to do a split run.
You know, what's funny is I had an absolutely disastrous run this morning myself, so I can relate to that. Just kind of just one of those days. I mean, you know, it's funny how even realistically, I should not have had a good run. Yet I was still expecting to maybe pull a rabbit out of the hat. It was just super. I had a super exhausting day yesterday, and was up really late, and Hayden epically slept terrible, so got no sleep, and went out for a run this morning. It was super on a really hilly route and super humid, and I don't know why I expected to be able to just knock out my super long run today. And after an hour, I was like, you know, I'm gonna can it and try again tomorrow. But it was you know, it's why did I even expect to have it? You know, I have a really good run base, you know, which I guess it's kind of your way. But well, if I ended up having one, I'm prepared to go the distance. So I was mentally prepared to go for 3 hours, but ended up being you know what? Today's just one of those days where I'm gonna pull the plug, regroup, and go back tomorrow.
Well, it's interesting that you say that you were mentally prepared for it, but physically, obviously, you Were you were tired? You mean, or?
Oh man, I was I was exhausted. I mean, I could tell, and I've been dealing with like a little bit of a respiratory issue the last like probably 3 to 4 days. I'm sure if it's just like the junk here in Nashville, it's like catching up with me, or running so much in Percy Warner with all the foliage and all that kind of stuff. But I've just been hawking up like green stuff after green stuff, like no like nasal drainage, just like straight lungs.
Wow.
And so I took off. It was super humid this morning. It just got done storming here. And so I took off, and dude, I could tell within the first half mile going, because I've been choosing.
Yeah, but don't listen to that first half mile.
Well, this was different. I was starting to wheeze, and I was like, man, this is so for me, because I don't drink anymore. I had a feeling like I was like, this is how I used to feel when I'd get up and try to run hungover, like minimal sleep, high heart rate, and dude, my body temp spikes like an insane amount, like super quick. And it's funny because I'm not like a slave. I try not to be a slave to the data much anymore. But on my new Garmin, it says like after like 5 or 6 minutes, it tells you like plus or minus performance wise, like if your performance is good or bad or poor based on like how you've recovered. And usually it's like way off, and it's like it underestimates what I usually do. And today it was like +5, like performance great, and I was like, you're full of crap. I was like, this thing is garbage. And when I went along my merry way, and I was because I'm kind of transitioning from my traditional flat speed work stuff into just really only concentrating on hills and slowing it down. And so I hopped on this really brutal hill in Percy Warner that I've just been like, I've probably done it. I probably did it total probably 30 or 40 times this last week.
Nice.
And that's kind of one of our topics that I wanted to get into is some point in this podcast. But anyway, after I got done, I was just like dripping. My my core temp was just like sky high. And I was like, this is just not my day. And so I texted Allie, and I was like, I'm just going to pack it up, take it back to the car, and try again tomorrow. And I always text them. I text her, and I text her a picture of myself because I look rough. I mean, like real rough. And I just said fail. And she was like, well, failing would have been not even trying to go out there today. And I was like, there you go. Always leave it to her to kind of spring a positive. But yeah, so I'm gonna go back out and try again tomorrow. But
the better.
So we'll see. Yeah.
No, that's great that she said that. What you said earlier about you don't drink, but that's how you felt, and I find that very interesting actually, because I wonder. I never understand like why that sort of stuff happens. I don't know if it's the firework resin from all the Pred celebration last night and the Stanley Cup playoff, or the CMA fast is just like bogging down the air around there. I don't know.
Seriously.
But it's like I've been thinking about that a lot lately because there are certainly times when you feel like that, and certain times when you just feel like you're light as a feather and you can float and just go forever, and it's just a bizarre thing. I know we talked with Brad the other time about peak performance and like maybe what some of the reasoning is for that, but I wonder how much that comes down to like diet and just that's what I've been thinking about a lot lately, is like I really need to clean up my diet, and you kind of go on road trips like I am right now, and it's easy to get off that wagon. You just feel so sluggish,
Oh yeah, just bogged down.
So especially going into the summer, you talk about like eating lighter, because that's just natural, because you don't want to have all those dense calories and the heat. So I don't know. I mean, that's a topic for another time, but I found it interesting, and because I'm sure most people battle that, unless they're just clean eaters.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody does it. I mean, probably once a week. They're like, man, this run's not going to go well, and it's because of this. But again, it's about managing. It's about two things, in my opinion. It's about managing expectations and flexibility. and coaching myself, and I encourage some athletes too, is like, yes, is getting in your workouts, chronologically Monday through and consecutively Monday through Sunday, my preferred route, sure. But if it comes down to like you literally have to switch every single day because of life, stress, work, or just not feeling it, but you still end up getting in 85 to 90% of the workouts, then do that. It's still about getting in the work. You don't get less points for doing it or not doing it on a specific day, or more points. And we've always talked about this before, and about listening to your body and not being afraid to adjust. And so today was like one of those things like, man, like I can either suffer like dramatically here for the next 2 more hours and go insane and just be really disappointed and probably just so fatigued.
Yeah, wreck your next workout.
And just wreck, just overly fatigued. It's just the bottom line. And, wreck the next few days, or like, you know what, I've got an easy 1 hour day here in the schedule the next 3 days anyway. Why not just flip this around and see if this works and try it again tomorrow? Mm-hmm. Instead of just being married to it that you kind of have to have it. To a point you need to stick on schedule, but to another point you need to just have that confidence of being like, you know what, some days just bag it, and whether it's work or life or weather, nothing's gonna always cooperate. I mean, rarely does it cooperate. And so I think it's a good lesson for everybody to they've already probably experienced it. They just kind of maybe haven't learned from it, so much. But one of the things I did want to discuss today, I was had a friendly little back and forth with 2 of my athletes earlier this week, Kate and Lisa, and they were asking me what I was doing today, and it's hilly around here, but it's not Leadville hilly,
right?
And I have like, not necessarily coined this phrase, but I brought up in multiple podcasts, which is basically, I say variety is for the weak. Find something that works and stick to it. And so there was we've had emails before about questions and like, hey, do you know what if there aren't that many hills and you say do a hilly route and this and this and this, and you don't need a hill, in my opinion. You don't need a hilly route. You just need a hill. Mm. And so basically what I shared with them was on Thursday, is my goal for my specific goal for the, my goals now have changed within each workout from the specific outcome that I want. And right now I'm really focused on how much elevation gain I can run in the shortest amount of time. Not always just trying to do it super fast, but also just trying to accumulate that different leg fatigue, that different neuromuscular response, and just the different muscles you engage with just constantly running uphill, but also downhill. Like you're just doing a whole different kind of muscle work. And so there's this hill on the if I go reverse on the 5.8 at Percy Warner, that if you're participating in our C26 triathlon camp, July 13th through 16th, you'll be able to embrace. It's like when I start from the first in the entrance, and within 1 mile, I can make it a little over 300 feet of elevation just within that mile. And so what I did, which is pretty substantial. If you're gonna do the same thing 10 miles, you're covering 3,000 feet. But anyway, so I got to, my goal for the day was to get at least 1,500 feet of elevation in an hour and a half. And what that meant for me is I'm basically gonna have to get to this like really steep hill that'll take me about 2 to 3 minutes to get up, and 2.5 minutes to get down, and literally just do this hill. And I did it, I think I did it 17 times.
That sounds like a blast, man.
The same hill. This literally the same hill. I'd go up, and come back down, and I'd go up and I'd come back down. And yes, can it be like mind numbing and like mentally exhausting? Sure.
But what puts you in the moment more than that, man?
I 100% agree. I mean, I know what to expect because I'm doing the same thing. And, a lot of times I think it's important because we're all, even myself included, are often obsessed with numbers and data and what am I specifically going to accomplish. But what I've figured out that I really like about this different style journey is that I enjoy, and whether that's because I've just kind of made myself enjoy it based on my experience or what I'm going to kind of try to conquer this year, or it's just me personally. But I've always kind of said, like, I'm good at going about 90%, and I can go for days. But when it comes to going like 100, 110% and like just reaching like that over boundary of going like 110,
that just manageable challenge.
What? I don't know about that. It's just like that step over the red line that I haven't found where I can do that yet. But I can go 95% of effort or max for long periods. And so for me, this 1,500 feet an hour and a half was a just manageable challenge. It was hot. It was about 90 degrees. It did in the afternoon on Thursday, like 2 or 3, to try to. That's my only real way of trying to simulate and get some benefit. The fact that I don't have the luxury of training at elevation and altitude, and so I ended up actually getting 2,000 feet, 2,011 feet in just over an hour, and I think it was an hour and 33. But it was doing that, finding that hill. I'm like, you know what? I've just got this number to chase, which was the elevation. And I knew what I was doing specifically. I wasn't worried about my speed. I wasn't worried about, how fast my splits were going to be. It was just going up, and it was getting it in. And while I think it can definitely be mentally crushing for some people, just to kind of do the same thing over and over again, that you need something different. Sometimes I feel like that's more common when you don't have a specific goal set in mind. Because you're just kind of going to run. So you need more stimulation because you don't have something else to focus on. For me, I was focused on one number, and that was elevation gain. And so I had that pulled up on my watch, and that's all I looked at. Elevation, elevation, elevation. Going up, going down, going down. And it didn't matter to me that I was doing this same hill 17 times. It was because I had a specific goal in mind. And I think that's what sometimes even I can on certain days, and athletes I know can get lost in just the yes, there are perfect days, and you need to have a lot of days more often than not where you don't have a specific schedule on tap. But you also need to have specific days where it is all about something. It's kind of like in somebody posted on our Crushing Iron closed Facebook page. They were like, if I've learned one thing, that's been great, from the podcast and from the closed group, it's, make your easy days easy and your hard days hard. And I think that also goes mentally. Make your workouts not as mentally draining some days, and then some days make it to where you have to focus the entire time. And the environment and where you are or the route you're running is really meaningless. It's about executing and reaching an actual a goal or a number or a pace or whatever it is. But I think you're only able to do that once or twice a week mentally, I think. Because after that, your mind's just like, man, I need some freedom. I need to just run, or I need to just ride. And so I think it's good both mentally and emotionally to have both ends, and I think it does a benefit for you in a million different ways. Not just to mention, physically, but I think your body needs that, and I think it craves that actually.
Yeah. Let me ask you this then, since you're talking about running hills, and obviously you're doing Leadville, and that's a whole other monster. But another thing that popped up this weekend is another guy that I've met through triathlon, through my friend Pete. His name's Dave Richter. He was at the funeral, and we started talking a little bit. He's doing Muncie, and he's kind of got me a little bit riled about trying to get in there and do it. And
well, we got friends that'll be there.
I know
quite a few C26 buddies that'll be there.
So he's kind of got me a little bit. It was kind of interesting because one of the first thoughts I had about that is, as we were talking about, I feel like all of my halves have been virtually the same, and I haven't been able to break through. So one of the things I talked about is lifting a little bit, but the other one was, and this proves again that we're kind of on the same wavelength a lot, is that I was out there today running, and I was thinking about running hills and really amping my hill workout. So granted, most of us aren't going to be in the condition to do what you just did, but let's just say I went out there and did that workout, but did it 10 times, or just like what kind of advantages like if I really focused on hills, and of course Muncie comes off and everyone says it's kind of a flat run, but it really is a sneaky.
It's not. It is a very sneaky. If they tell you it's flat, they're lying. It is rolling the entire way. I actually don't think there's a flat section on that course on the run.
So what if I were to, for example, I'm kind of an extremist, but I want to figure out something, but like if I just mainly trained hills, would you think that would be a good thing?
Well, specifically for you, yes.
Okay.
For a couple of reasons. One is, and there are a few things, and it's funny that you bring this up. Is I actually created like a little PDF of for my athletes, like an onboarding email with guidelines and specifics and terminology. So anyway, one of my kind of rules guidelines at the top was always, when in doubt, always pick the hillier route.
Okay.
Because it's so hills benefit hills and flats. Flats benefit flats. Hard work on flat terrain isn't going to help you when it comes to running hills, or not as much as running hills is going to help you when it comes to running flats, and especially with your suspect hamstring. This is two things I think will benefit you really well. One is getting some extra hamstring work. Two is that unless you're choosing like a really, really aggressive descent, where your downhill is going to be really, really taxing, and it's just a steep. Because you got to remember, the steeper incline you choose, the steeper decline, and that can do just as much, if not way more damage on your body than than running like a regular sprint on a track or on concrete or asphalt. It's just so much extra pounding. Honestly, that's what people say that I've read and who I've talked to. The downhills are what actually cause people to DNF at Leadville, not the uphills.
Oh, I believe that. I've been running out where you run, and I was doing some great stuff out there, and I never had IT band issues, and it all started on those downhills that you're talking about.
If you take those steep ones, so anyway, but also I think for you, it's a much safer way to add volume to someone's workout. Because, like I said, again, unless you're choosing a really steep incline and descent, the amount of pounding you're do on your body going up a hill is so much less than going down on the local greenway, asphalt pavement, or sidewalk, and just pounding that in your body. Because your turnover is going to be hopefully quicker and softer, which is gonna decrease the overall load on your frame and your body anyway. But then it's also you're going to be going slower. So you're not actually going to be doing as much damage to your body as if you're running flat, on a flat course. And in my example of this, and I don't know if it was you I mentioned it to, but so when I was in Kansas before I moved back to Nashville, all my runs were super long, and I did a lot of my intervals on asphalt and concrete, and they're just pancake flat. And what I found for me is that doing those actually, not from like a muscular standpoint, helped me with these hills, but from like a damage standpoint, like doing these hills and doing these longer workouts have like been easier on me structurally, because I was doing 3 to 3.5 hour runs on asphalt and concrete with like no change in stride and no change in what muscles I'm doing. Like for me, and I think I talked about this in a previous podcast, is I actually like rolling run courses or run courses like the Country Music Marathon or, at Wisconsin or other places, because you get to use different muscle groups. Whereas like a pancake flat course, and the same could be said for choosing a flat course, for a 70.3, an Ironman, an Olympic, a sprint, whatever it is, you're just going to be down on the aero bars the whole entire way. So you're not using that many different muscle groups versus a super hilly course where you're going to be sitting farther back in the saddle on your aero bars, or you're going to be out of your aero bars completely, or you're sitting way up, or even having to get out of the saddle. It's all different muscle groups. And so the same thing for me can be said for running. And so for you, I think it's a great way to safely increase volume and time. And I wouldn't obsess so much about the mileage. I'm a huge fan of time anyway. Run for time, don't run for mileage. You can't cheat time. You can always cheat mileage based on your effort. So I think it'd be great. And mix in a few downhills, but I think for you specifically, I'm not here to harp on your age or anything, but I think that strength training, which hills are a form of strength training, and then lessening the load and pounding your body takes are two huge benefits for somebody in your specific position.
That makes sense. I totally agree with it, and I don't care. I mean, I have to be realistic, about my age. I'm fortunate to not really have any issues with my knees or ankles and things like that, but I definitely think that upon reflection, when we trained for Wisconsin the first time, I definitely ran a lot of hills. And I mean, you had me doing a lot of hill repeats, and I was in the parks, and instead of doing, but lately I found myself, I have been kind of leaning towards this ideal of going further and trying to build up mileage, and that usually translates to long flat runs for the most part. I mean, it's easier to kind of do that when you're starting to go out and think about a 15 mile run or something. Yeah, you don't want to get too many hills in there, because
exactly.
You just sort of want to feel good about the ability to go 14 or 15 miles. But
totally, back
in the day when we do these hill repeats, I didn't even know half the time how far I was going.
Exactly.
I was just going up, and usually, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, you, at least for what we were doing at the time, you would have me kind of go up harder and then really kind of recover coming down.
Yes. It's on.
I don't know if that's what you do still.
Well, I mean, I know I've had to kind of play with, for everything I've read, like changing up your cadence going downhill can really, because going downhill on really steep can be really, really just crushing to your muscles. So what I've been doing is like speeding up my cadence like really, really, really quick, like as fast as I can for like a minute, and then that next minute take long strides. So I'm really just kind of like trying to spread out the damage and the load for the downhills. But again, back to what you said in terms of choosing a route that you get done faster because you're going for distance, that's just human nature. I mean, it's just, you're always going to pick the ones where you're like, well, but my pace is going to drop a little bit. It's like, but I really want to stick to this pace, and you get so obsessed with, these paces and these, I want to get done. I want to have this split, because what I see in my watch and like the pace that I have is what's going to validate if this was a good experience, if this was a good workout, and am I getting faster. And so just to kind of, I was scrolling back through my workouts, and so just to give you kind of an example of the difference in where I was in April versus where I am now, or looking at almost exactly, literally to the day, almost exactly 2 months later, is April 2nd. This is in Kansas. I did a 21-mile run, and my average was 8:18 for that. For those 21 miles, and my average heart rate was 157. The workout I was talking about earlier this week, it was June 1st. My average heart rate, again, same thing, 157. but my average speed 10:24.
Interesting. Yeah.
So over 2 minutes slower. But again, what I went back to is my goal was elevation, and my goal was to get, to strengthen what I was doing, strengthen legs. Even the long run I had the weekend before, a little over 16. It took me almost 2 hours and 40 minutes to get those 16 miles in, but I went over 2,500 feet in elevation. And so it's all about, and that's the thing. I mean, I know we talk about this all the time, and it is literally, I think, the most difficult aspect of training, and especially training for a sport such as triathlon, even at the sprint distance, is patience and understanding where you are and being okay with it. I think it's actually, maybe it was Brad who actually had this quote that I read. It was like, the number one thing you need to understand, whether it's coming back from injury or starting a new sport or even like ramping up your volume, is understanding where you are right now, being okay with it, and not jumping ahead. And I think we do that so often in life and in workouts, and it's like you're always chasing that better number. But the numbers mean different things to different people for different reasons. And so I think that's, ultimately one of those, especially this time of year, because we're like in the meat of the season where there's, races every single weekend. And training is becoming the most important because you're in your build or your peak phase and race specific phase, and it's like these numbers matter more because it's going to dictate what I do for races. And a lot of times it's I prefer to look at execution as executing mentally first before you execute physically, because I think if you reverse them, then you're ultimately just going to fail, in my opinion, if you do it reverse and try to just only focus on numbers and take the body and the mind out of it. Unless you're having the perfect day, you're probably going to have a less than stellar performance. Or if you go the other way, which I suggest is mentally and emotionally executing, then almost every single time, no matter what your body is feeling, you're going to perform at its best that day. Now, will it be the best that you want it to be? Maybe not. Will it be better than you thought it would be? Maybe. But at least, and this is kind of going back to the previous podcast, which I've gotten quite a few text messages like, I really love that quote, race with the horse you trained on. And I don't think you can do that without really, really knowing the horse. And that comes with time and patience.
Yeah, that's a good point about that, because it's almost, if you start going out there with that effort, if you don't start with the mind, you don't have purpose behind your workout, really. And so, maybe we should start a new trend where, how people say, hey, you went running, how far did you go? And maybe we should get the first instinct to start saying, I went for 1:15, an hour and 15 minutes. Say your time versus your distance.
I do that quite frequently. People get angry with me.
That's good. I was going to say, I think about it a lot. And I think they want to know the mileage.
I'm like, exactly. I'm like, I don't even know. I don't even know how far I went. Like that was one of my least favorite things actually about the trace. The only thing I don't like about the trace is there's a mile marker every mile. Mm-hmm. and it's right there up close to the road. So you always see it, but I always go for time. And someone's like, well, how far did you go? I have no idea. I just know I went for 3 hours and I worked hard and I got this far, because it's so relative, and it's like but it also it's so attainable. All you have to do is just move or just ride or just swim for X amount of time. That's not really even for me an expectation. It's just, and that's why when I talk to people so much, especially when I start coaching them, is listen, outside of the pool, we're all more than often not prescribe a distance, just because that's just based on given what you got. It's the pool. It's 25 meters, 50 meters. No matter what, it's going to add up to a number, so here it is. But when it comes to running and cycling, one of the biggest kind of transitional phases I go through with new athletes is transitioning them from a miles and distance obsession with just going for time. Because what I do is if I tell you, like, all right, well, because it especially affects your easy days. So if I tell you, Mike, I'm like, all right, Mike, go run 7 miles really, really easy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't have that much time, bro.
You do exactly. Well, you do. You just don't manage it well. But you've got 7 miles. You're like, well, super easy to me is like 10:30s, but I could save probably 5 or 6 minutes. Like 5 or 6 minutes is like a make or break deal breaker for your day.
Yeah.
You spend a 20th of that on Facebook probably. But you're gonna go faster. But if I say, all right, go for, I need you to run an hour today. Well, you can't cheat that hour. It is what it is. And what I find is that really teaches athletes to pace themselves more appropriately, and kind of creating that, we talk about all the time on the bike, especially is calibrating that internal power meter by figuring out, okay, I've got to run for 2 hours, or I've got to run for an hour and a half. This feels like a pace. I can run for an hour and a half. And then what you most often see is you don't see people crash and burn as much towards the end, because they knew they had to make it for a time. And at that point, it's deciding, and it's making a conscious decision to buy into that hour and think, I'm going to run this and keep it slow, because no matter what, I've got to run, for this amount of time. So people will often keep it slower than go faster or try to go, too quick. And same thing on the bike, because, once you get to, regardless of whatever distance you're looking at, or if you're just a standalone runner or cyclist or swimmer, the longer you get, the most important aspect, and in my opinion, like, distance becomes falls way down the list. It's more about time. It's more about time in the saddle. It's about time on your feet. All right, good. Go run 15 miles. Okay, or go be on your feet for 2.5 hours. And I actually have athletes tell me that it hurts them more to go slower than it does to go fast. I think you and I have discussed this privately.
Oh, for sure, it's me.
But that's part of what it is, because you're working different parts of your body. And if you think about it, like when you get to, especially like the end of a half marathon, or the end of a marathon, or whatever it is, a marathon or a triathlon event, like the longer you go, what you often find that you're actually using different muscles in your legs and in your trunk, because you're actually putting on the brakes. Because if you ran as fast as you wanted to, oh my God, it would hurt. And so you're actually, which is terrible, because you're putting more resistance on something you should be using to propel yourself. But that's what happens, because you're like, oh my gosh, this hurts. I don't really want to go. So you're pulling yourself back while trying to go forward, and that takes different muscle groups to do. But having said that, to wrap that point up, is there is a totally different aerobic and anaerobic system, and there's a totally different muscular focus than going out and running tempo intervals for an hour and 15 minutes and accumulating 13 miles, or going out and running 13 miles that's going to take you 2 hours and 15 minutes. And that's the point, is you want to build a body and a structure and a frame that can withstand being on its feet or in the saddle for a duration of time, not so much an obsession of distance. Because I will be the first one to tell you, your PR run of 2 hours, whatever distance that yielded you in training, guess what? You're going to be at least, like, the greatest performers in a triathlon are always at least 10% slower And for the rest of us, you're looking at like 20 to 30% slower than your open time. For some people, that's almost an hour, if not more, on their feet, which is a long time. And so that's why another reason that I think training with time is so beneficial.
So that's got me thinking again. I'm thinking about Muncie here, and and talking about when you talk about your long run or whatever, your long prep run and things like that. But what if my long prep run was an hour and 45 minutes of hill repeats versus...
Oof.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's if I could ever get to that point. I'm just saying. Maybe not, the stuff you're running, but, long climbs and slow descents and whatever. But to me, I think, well, if I could do that comfortably, if I could get to that point where I could do that comfortably, how would my run fare at Muncie? I think it would be huge advantage versus knocking out a 16-miler, flat.
Oh yeah, you're in, it's a flat 16-miler in a hilly hour and 45. I mean, like I said, it's totally different. They're totally different animals, and everything is so different. I think that's something that athletes really sometimes tend to forget is the pace and power and heart rate. Those all matter a lot. Sure they do, but your body matters even more. And I think so many athletes struggle with either paying attention to or even recognizing is probably a better way to put it, coming from a place where, like, if you're in a hilly location and you are up out of your aero bars a lot, or you're on the horns, you just like to ride them up there, and then you go to Muncie, which is literally pancake flat, and you expect to, or you're going to attempt to be in your aero bars the entire time you're riding, and then you're going to get up and try and run. Let me know how that goes for you. Because it takes time, and it takes you have to get acclimated and used to being in an aero position for basically the whole time if you want to be, for 2.5, 3 hours, 3.5 hours, whatever it is. It's from your lower back to your upper back and your core, and once you start to strain those, maybe for the first time because you don't do aero a ton, when you go run, we talked about this on our running podcast before. What collapses first? The trunk, and then the rest just follows. And so there's little things like that people don't necessarily, think about or recognize. I think that are super important. I mean, I knew that's my best bike split to date, at least for a 70.3 is at Muncie, and I literally think the reason that I did so well was because I knew exactly the course that I needed to train for. And so what I did was I trained at the lab. I mean, you were out there with me, which
that was
is
my best bike split too.
Yeah, so you're in aero at the lab literally the entire time, unless you just for whatever reason don't want to. And so and that was one of the reasons that I bike so well, because I was prepared to ride in that position for as long as I needed to. I think ended up with like a 219 or 220 that day, which is by far my best bike split. But I yes, was I stronger? Sure. But also, was I more comfortable being in a certain position? Absolutely. And I think that's something that we often forget or don't recognize we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, and you can roll that right into swimming too. If you swim in the pool the whole time and all of a sudden now you got to start sighting a lot. By the time you get out of the water, you're back. That process of deteriorating has already started.
Yep, absolutely.
Uh-huh. Well, there you go. That's like you gotta need to swim hills too.
Yeah, that's called the band.
Okay.
band work and pull buoy. It's all about that's basically equivalent strength work. That's what hills are: strength work and form and muscular specific strength.
How to not suck at swimming, number 3, coming at you.
Yeah, we could probably use. We could actually. That kind of brings me now that we're wrapping up. Man, we did pretty good today for not having a set on topic.
Well, yeah, we're gonna call these the
ready to roll
casual episode.
Yeah, casual
inside
episode.
chat.
It's the inside the mind of not having a plan, Mike and Robbie. No, that brings up a few things, a few house cleaning items, I would say. First and foremost, thanks again to everybody who is a part of our Crushing Iron closed Facebook group. If you're not a part of it and you want to be, feel free to just search on Facebook Crushing Iron group, and then either Mike and I will accept you. And then also, if you could keep up the reviews on iTunes, those are really, really helpful for us. And, whether it's just leaving a comment or giving us however many stars you think we're worth. Don't forget to like the Crushing Iron Facebook page. And then if you want to or are interested in, shoot me an email if you're interested in our C26, our very first C26 triathlon camp. That'll be July 13th to the 16th here in Nashville. We're getting pretty close to being sold out. And it's gonna be a blast. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm gonna email c26coach@gmail.com. What else you got, Mike?
If I may throw in a personal plug.
Absolutely.
Well, in the past, I've kind of talked about my movie Saving Banksy, and we have just hit Netflix. So if anybody has Netflix and wants to pick that up on a boring night with nothing to do, I would appreciate it. Same thing. It's gotten high praise all over the place, but now it's on Netflix, and I'm sure that it'll be a lot more accessible for people to catch. So it's called Saving Banksy, and I would appreciate that.
Man, I just pulled it up.
Yeah, it just dropped on Netflix 2 days ago or something like that.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's that easy.
Yeah.
There it is. There's the intro.
He's got it. Street art, man. It's the.
And man, it's awesome. Everybody I know that's watched it has had nothing but good things to say about it. So absolutely, because we are all about doing personal plugs if need to. I don't know if you saw Brad's email from earlier. Did you catch that one?
No, what, earlier today?
Yeah, earlier today.
No, I missed it. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, so if you could, so tomorrow this will drop on the 5th, and it goes on sale July 6th. If you liked Brad's podcast and our
number 59.
Our talk with him. Yeah, 59, our talk about he and Steve Magnus's another previous guest, their book Peak Performance. If you liked what we talked about and are interested in reading it, which I would highly suggest, go ahead and get your pre-order in Monday before you get a chance to win a ton of prizes from them. And we'll put that link in the show notes. And a thing I just had this conversation earlier is, and this will be on like a trial basis. But what I've kind of looked into is I'm actually going to get an underwater camera and start to use a few other pieces of software. And if you are interested in at all having your swim stroke analyzed, regardless of where you are in the country, we're going to stick to the U.S. for right now just because of in case I need to ship this camera to you. But what I'm going to start doing and dabbling in is getting underwater video of athletes who want it or feel like they need it above and below the surface. And then I'm going to use a software where I can actually draw lines to give kind of like an overvoice where you hear my voice talking to you and drawing lines, giving you technique advice, things to correct, drills to do to correct it, and swim workouts to make you better. I'm going to start incorporating that into my services. So it'll be this is definitely in the beta version. But if you are interested at all in having me do that, I've had a lot of people reach out in the past that want me to do that. And so you ask and you shall receive. So I'm gonna start getting in that. So again, feel free to email at c26coach@gmail.com if you want to be one of the first beta testers to have your swim stroke basically dissected is what's going to happen. But I can promise it'll make you a faster swimmer.
That is cool, man.
Yeah. I spent that's really how I got into I mean, obviously I grew up swimming year round. And then ocean rescue stuff is how I started to really fall in love with open water swimming. But where I really got like into the technique version of it is I worked with a guy named Dan Powell who actually interned at the University of Indiana for swim stroke analysis when Mark Spitz was there training for the Olympics. And his job was to analyze Mark Spitz swim stroke. Which, if you're familiar with swimming at all, that's like saying, I guess a better analogy now would be like, that's like saying go dissect Michael Phelps' butterfly and freestyle. Like, good luck with that. His dad is, I don't think he still is, maybe he's the assistant coach, but was at the head coach at Western Kentucky for like over 30 years. And we had an endless pool and an underground camera and then a flat screen TV. And we would put swimmers in the endless pool and have a mirror on the bottom, have them swim for, intermittent times, and then basically hook up the at that point it was a GoPro to the flat screen, and then slow motion their stroke, critique it, have them correct it, and then go over. And then he would send everybody home with the CD, and people just loved it. And I learned, as you can imagine, just a ton from him, down to like the smallest thing. He worked with former gold medalists in the Olympics. We had somebody in that was from the U.S. National Open Water Swim Team. So it was awesome experience. It's where I learned a lot of my swim philosophy. Anyway, but yeah, so I think that's something that I'm definitely going to start getting into. And so again, if you have any interest in being a part of that, shoot me an email.
So I'm curious though, because obviously Spitz, doesn't a lot of his stuff hold up even today almost? Wasn't he just like a beast, or is he?
A lot of his records have already fallen.
Already, but that was like what, 72?
Oh
70?
God, man, he was, so when I actually was growing up, I had heard of him, but Matt Biondi was actually one of my favorite swimmers. He was a 50 freestyle guy. But no, Mark Spitz, he was like the Jesse Owens of swimming. And he was just grunt work. No fancy suits, like they have now.
Dude, I don't even think he wore goggles back then, did they?
Oh, no. Or caps.
That's what I was going to ask. Did your buddy ever get down to this? It's like, Mark, you're pretty solid, Mark. I think maybe the only thing you got left is take the mustache off.
Yeah, at that point for him, it didn't even matter.
Did he even put his head in the water, or was he kind of like Johnny Wise?
Yeah, he actually did that. But he was the first one to do like in 1972. He was the first one that went perfect for goals, 7 for 7.
7 golds.
Yep. He in all world records too, not just 7 gold medals, but 7 new world records and 7 gold medals.
With no goggles, mustache, no cap.
He may not even shave his legs.
Did he wear surfer shorts?
I'm not sure.
No, I think he had a Speedo on. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. But
he might not have shaved his legs. That's a good point. I bet he did. Well, he might not have.
He probably didn't need to. But no. Awesome. Anyway, yeah. What a stellar man. Here's to a great stash.
Yep, Mark Spitz. Okay, man. I think I'm gonna go run some hills. I don't know about you.
I ran mine this morning, remember?
Yeah, I know, but split day.
Well, we'll see. Enjoy yours. Let me know how it goes, and maybe I'll get out later.
Okay, have a good one, man. I'll see you soon.
All right, man. See you. Bye.